जय। चलो गुणजीत गुणेढ्या नक्तं दिवं सकरुणं तव पादपद्मं मोहं कषं बहुकृतं न भजे तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो भक्तिर्भगश्च भजनं भवभेदकारी गच्छन्त्यलं सुविपुलं गमनाय तत्त्वं वक्रोद्धृतोऽपि हृदमे न च भाति किञ्चित् तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो तेजस्तरन्ति तरसा त्वयि तृप्त तृष्णा रागे कृते ऋतपथे त्वयि राम कृष्णे मर्त्यमृतं तव पदं मरणोमि नाशं तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो कृत्यं करोति कलुषं कुहकान्तकारी स्नान्तं शिवं सुविमलं तव नाम नाथ यस्मादहं त्वशरणो जगदेकगम्य तस्मात् त्वमेव शरणं मम दीनबन्धो ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतार वरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय नमो नमः। ॐ नमो श्री भगवते रामकृष्णाय सर्वमङ्गल माङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थ साधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। सृष्टि स्थिति विनाशानां शक्ति भूते सनातनी गुणाश्रये गुणमये नारायणी नमोस्तुते। शरणागत दीनार्त परित्राण परायणे सर्वस्याते हरे देव नारायणी नमोस्तुते। जय 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 महामाई की जय। जय भगवान श्री रामकृष्ण देव की जय। जय स्वामी जी महाराज जी की जय। प्रकृतिं परमामभयां वरदां नररूपधरा जनतापहरा शरणागतसेवकतोषकरे प्रणमामि परा जननीं जगतां गुणहीनसुता न परादयुता कृपयाद्धसमुद्धरमोहगता करणी भवसागर पार करे प्रणमामि करा जननीं जगता विषयं कुसुमं परिरुत्य सदा चरणाम्बुजयुगलं चरणाश्रयदानेन कृपामयि नमोऽस्तु ते लज्जापटावृते नित्यं शारदे ज्ञानदायिके पापेभ्यो न सदा रक्ष कृपामयि नमोऽस्तु ते रामकृष्णगतप्राणां तन्नाम श्रवणप्रियं तद्भावरञ्जिताकार प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः पवित्रं चरितं यस्य पवित्रं जीवनं तथा पवित्रता स्वरूपिणे तस्यै कुर्मो नमो नमः देवीं प्रसन्नां प्रणतात्रिहन्त्री योगीन्द्रपूजा युगधर्मपात्रे तां शारदां भक्तिविज्ञानदात्री दयास्वरूपां प्रणमामि नित्यं स्नेहेन बन्धा मनोस्मदीयं दोषानशेषा सद्गुणीकरोषि अहेतुनानो दयसे सदोषा स्वाङ्गे गृहीत्वा यदिदं विचित्रं प्रसीद माता विनयेन याचे नित्यं भवस्मे भक्तेषु तेषु प्रेमैकबिन्दु चिरदग्धचित्ते विषिं च चित्तं कुरु न सुशान्तं जननीं शारदां देवी रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रीत्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः
Hello. Yeah. Namashri Atirajaya Vivekananda Sure Satchet Sukhaswarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So we return to Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga lectures after a gap of 2 months. It's away. And we'll just read through 2 quotations from the last paragraph where we had left off. And then we'll start with the passage for today. These 2 paragraphs and some of the preceding ones are passages where Swami Vivekananda has quoted freely translated passages of the Kathopanishad. After these 2 paragraphs, there are no further quotations per se. So he goes on to exposition of the central ideas after this. So today what we'll be doing is we'll be reading these paragraphs out in English, then going to the Mool text, the central text, which is the Kathopanishad, reading out the relevant verses from there. And next time round, we'll come back to what is the analysis of the ideas contained there. So this is where we had stopped last time. This Atman is not to be realized by the power of speech, nor by a vast intellect, nor by the study of their Vedas. And as Vivekananda said, this is a very bold utterance, particularly the statement that this is not to be attained by the study of the Vedas. The Vedas are supposed to be some kind of sacred book, but this is not to be attained by the study of these books. That's the thrust of this statement here. And the original, we'll come to the original passage in a little while. Yeah? But the paragraph ends with the following. But as Yama explains, those who are evildoers, whose minds are not peaceful, can never see the light. It is to those who are true in heart, pure in deed, whose senses are controlled, that this self manifests itself. Let me read these 2 verses out from the original Kathopanishad for now, then we'll get back to Swamiji. The first one, that this is not to be attained by the reading of various scriptural texts or sacred texts. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medhaya na bahuna shrutena yame vaishe vrinute tena labhya tasyaisha atma vivrinute tanumsyam. Of these, only the first line has been freely translated. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medhaya na bahuna shrutena. We had explained this last time, so I will not get into the explanation now. And the last passage that Vivekananda freely translates, here's the original. Na avirato duscharitan, na avirato duscharitan, na shanto na samahitaha, na shanta manaso vapi pragyane nainam apnuyat. Na avirato duscharitan, na ashanto na asamahitaha, na ashanta manaso vapi pragyanena enam apnuyat. This is where we had stopped. Na avirato duscharitan. Basically, things which are morally reprehensible, one who has not desisted from such actions. Second, na asamahitaha. Samahita means basically one whose mind is focused on the goal. Samahita, from which these words like samadhi, etc., come from. It means basically focused on a goal. So he whose who is not goal directed, so to speak. Na ashanta manasa, which means basically the mind is constantly agitated. Not for such people. For such people, through pragya, which means through sharp penetrating intellect alone, it is not possible to attain this goal. The reason at a certain commonsensical, psychological level is fairly simple. See, the thing is, what is the quest here? The quest is basically asking what is true, what is real behind one's empirical being. So there is this experimental datum, namely the fact that I exist. But when I try to catch hold of that, it somehow slips through my fingers and I cannot put my finger on what exactly that statement means. Similarly, we say that the world exists. But what exactly is this substratum called existence on which we regard as a quality of the world, as an essential quality of the world? And as soon as we try to grasp that, it slips again through our fingers. So what are we really trying to do? We are basically trying to find a common substratum of all our experiences. All our experiences. Now, if one is to find the substratum of all one's experiences, it is natural, it is logical to expect that the faculties of the mind which grant reality to all our experiences need to be unified. Unified in order to get at the foundation of this subjective factor that grants reality. So, for example, right now I'm reading out from these passages, and so the screen, the computer screen in front of me is projecting something to my mind. My mind is granting reality to it. Yeah? It's in modern psychology, this is called reification of experience. So R-E-I-F-Y, reify, meaning grant reality to. And then what one is really asking is, what is it in one's psyche that grants this reality, both to one's own existence and to the existence of the world? Yeah, it's this subject-object being unified by this faculty of reification. Where does it lie? What is it that says that I exist? What is it that says that the world exists? Where is this common psychological unification? And if all of one's experience is to be unified, then naturally the subject of analysis is this notion called all or everything. Without the mind being unified, which means a capacity to put all of these in one common basket, without that faculty being developed, without this faculty of unification of diverse experiences being developed, almost tautologically, it will be impossible to say that, oh, this is to really go for this ultimate goal. Why? Because if there is some part where the mind rushes out and says, oh, this is real and it's different from these others, and I'll think about the reality of those other things later, then one has not gotten to a position from this locus of unification. One is not yet at the locus of unification because one is at different points of time granting reality to different things without understanding that this is one common faculty that is giving reality to all these so-called diverse things, which means one is not trying to get away from the diversity of phenomena of subjective experience. This incapacity to get away from the diversity of subjective experience is exactly what we call, what the Kathopanishad calls here, ashanta manasa, which means that the mind is not quiescent, not quiet, not receptive to this all. Yeah? So therefore, na ashanto, na asamahita. Samahita means basically that the mind has now developed that capacity to unify all this diverse subjective experience into one common experiencer. This subject is there in and through every experience that we have. This is what leads us to say that, okay, I am seeing this laptop in front of me there is this other light, and there is this subjective experiencer which is common to all these things. This is something that is a datum which is common to us all, except that this subjective experiencer, which is a common piece of datum, is not investigated, is not subjected to a thoroughgoing enquiry. In order to subject this experiencer to a thoroughgoing enquiry, what needs to be done is that this experiencer needs to be seen or needs to be grasped in and through every single experience. This is what this Kathopanishad, this pratibodha viditam matam. So pratibodha, in every act of cognition, emotion, volition, there is this conscious principle which I call my I, which is experienced. And the mind immediately rushes out, forgets this experiencer, and goes to these diverse pieces of experiences as if they are different. This faculty of the mind to go and grant reality to one diverse phenomenon in contradiction to another. For now, this laptop is real. When I get away from here, this room is not real, the outside is real. This faculty of the mind, this capacity of the mind to grant reality to different things at different points of time, and hence unreality to that which is not in the spectrum of or in the range of cognition, this is the faculty which we are trying to analyze. And essentially, it is exactly this particular faculty that Advaita Vedanta regards as mithyatva, and Madhyamaka Buddhists, that's what they call shunya. Essentially, if you start analyzing these individual experiences, in them as they lose their individuality when analyzed. The factors that were making them different from the other or from their negation is destroyed through analysis. Yeah? So when a mind is not developed a capacity to unify, which means step back from an individual experience and catch hold of the universal experiencer to some extent, at least to some extent. Without that capacity at all developing, it is not possible to grasp the whole and get to the goal. That's all that is being said. At a certain level, if one analyzes one's psyche with a certain measure of subjective honesty, this passage is basically a tautology. It's something that is obvious, except that though it is obvious, we do not act on the basis of it. We understand that, yes, this is true, but our habits are such that they lead us to constantly granting different things, realities at different times. Okay, so this is where we were at the end of, at the beginning of summer, 2 months back. And so now let's get back to the passage that to a translation of a number of verses. So this is where what's called the third valli. It's the Kathopanishad is divided into two major parts, part 1 and part 2, and part 1 has 3 chapters, part 2 has 3 chapters also. So this is the third chapter of part 1, and Vivekananda does not quite go into part 2. He finishes off by summarizing basically all of the third chapter of part 1 in this one paragraph, and after that he is just going to talk about the essence of the Upanishad itself rather than going into specific passages. So it's a rather dense paragraph because it basically captures some 24 verses in one, or selects out at least half of those verses and summarizes and gives the gist in this one particular paragraph. So let me read out that and then we'll go back to the Upanishad itself. Here is a beautiful figure. Picture the self to be the rider, and this body the chariot. The intellect to be the charioteer, mind the reins, and the senses the horses. He whose horses are well broken, and whose reins are strung, and kept well in the hands of the charioteer, the intellect, reaches the goal which is the state of him, the omnipresent. But the man whose horses, the senses, are not controlled, nor the reins, the mind, well managed, goes to destruction. This Atman in all beings does not manifest himself to the eyes or the senses, but those whose minds have become purified and refined realize him. Beyond all sound, all sight, beyond form, absolute, beyond all taste and touch, infinite, without beginning and without end, even beyond nature, the unchangeable. He who realizes him frees himself from the jaws of death. But it is very difficult. It is, as it were, walking on the edge of a razor. The way is long and perilous, but struggle on, do not despair, awake, arise, and stop not till the goal is reached. Again, in this particular paragraph, he has, as I said before, Vivekananda has summarized essentially the entire content of the third valli, or chapter of part 1 of the Kathopanishad. Okay, so let's get to the Kathopanishad third valli and the relevant verses. And the first imagery that is given here, Atmanam Rathinam Vidhi Shariram Ratham Evatu Buddhing tu Sarathim Vidhi Mana Pragraham Evacha. So let's look at what these words mean. Atman is basically the real self, the principle of consciousness, is regarded as the Rathi, one who is the charioteer, who is the inhabitant of the chariot. The Sharira, which means this physical body, is imagined here as the chariot in which resides the owner of the chariot. Buddhim tu Sarathim Vidhi, Buddhi really is the charioteer. I mean, one who guides the horses, one who is sitting in front of the owner of the chariot, who guides the horses is the Buddhi, the intellect. One who basically takes the decisions as to which side to go, which side not to go. This is the discriminatory or analytical intellect. Takes care of two principal faculties, the capacity to decide and the capacity to analyze. 4 brain functions. Mana pragraham evacha. Pragraha is basically the reins by which the horses are held in the hand of the charioteer. So again, the owner of the chariot, or the one who is sitting in the chariot, is the self, the principle of consciousness. The body itself is the chariot. The buddhi, or discriminating or decisive intellect, is the charioteer, one who is guiding the horses, and the mind is the reins by which the intellect holds the horses in place. And then the imagery continues. Indriyani hayan ahu. Haya is horse. Yeah? Indriyani means the senses are referred to as the haya. Haya means horses. Yeah? So senses are analogous to the horses. Vishayan teshu gocharan. And just as the senses dwell on various sense objects, these objects are the road on which these horses travel. And then this last line of this imagery, of the basic start of this imagery, it defines the bhokta. One who is it? So, all right, fine, there is this principle of consciousness. Now there is this body and there is this mind, there are these senses, and somehow or the other we have successfully analyzed and put these things into different dockets. But then who is it that is actually enjoying? Are the senses enjoying? Is the principle of consciousness enjoying? Who is it that is really enjoying this whole life or experiencing? Enjoyment is just one word and it's somehow not very happy, particularly in moments of sorrow. But who is the experiencer of both joyful experience and painful experience? Now that's said in the last line here. Atma in indriya mano yuktam bhokta iti ahuhu manishinaha. A categorical answer is not really being given, but what is being said is that the wise who have actually analyzed this problem, they say that this principle of consciousness in conjunction with the senses and the mind is the enjoyer or experiencer, which means that the principle of consciousness is essential to give us this sense that I am experiencing. But experiencing through what? Through the senses, through the mind. Without these intermediaries, without these instruments, experience cannot happen. Without the principle of consciousness, experience cannot happen. Therefore, this conjunction between these two aspects of one's being is what gives rise to experience, and the subject of that experience is the experiencer. So, what is bhokta? Bhokta is the experiencer. Experiencer of what? Of experiences. What are the things that go into an experience? It is the subject and the instrument and the object. The subject is the principle of consciousness. The instrument here is the mind and the senses, and the object is the objects of the senses. It's a conjunction of all these three that gives rise to an experience. Remove from that the objects of the senses, what you're left with is the experiencer. That's what's called the bhokta here. Okay. Fine. So this is an analysis into a fairly simplified analysis of our subject, of our life. Yastu avigyanavan bhavati ayuktena manasa sada tasya indriyani avashyani dushta ashva iva sarathehe. The analogy continues. Yastu avigyanavan bhavati. Vijnana is basically this discriminatory or decisive intellect which holds the mind in place. But one who is bereft of this kind of a decisive, clear intellect, yastu avijnanavan bhavati, which means basically in another place, so Vivekananda says, it's a case where the charioteer who is supposed to control the horses is drunk, yeah, or is tipsy. Yeah. So then this charioteer is missing in action, or is there present in name but not in act, not really being able to function. Yastu avigyanavan bhavati ayuktena manasa sada. That means the reins are not tightly held in the hands of the charioteer. What happens in such a case? It's a short formula for disaster. So what happens? Tasya indriyani avashyani. That means such a person's senses, the horses, are not under control. Dushta ashwa iva sarathehe. As if it's like the mischievous or uncontrolled or naughty horses for the charioteer. Conversely, yastu vigyanavan bhavati. But one who is equipped with a clear, well-defined intellect. Yuktena manasa sada. With the mind tightly controlling, mind held strongly in the hands of this decisive faculty, the intellect. Tasya indriyani vashyani. His senses are under control. Sat ashwa iva sarathehe. Like the good horses, good well-broken horses, well-trained horses of the charioteer. Now the analogy shifts to what is the significance of these passages? What is the significance of this analogy? Yastu avigyanavan bhavati amanaskaha sada ashuchihi na satat padam apnoti samsaram cha adhigacchati. So basically, as given this analogy of the charioteer, the chariot, and the owner of the chariot, and then, well, the chariot could be in the hands of an effective charioteer or it could not. And what happens if one is in the hands of a good charioteer, and what happens if one is not? Those results are being stated now. Yastu avigyanavan bhavati, which means this charioteer is not a capable one. Which means our intellect is incapable of analyzing and taking clear decisions. What happens then? What happens if one's mind is amanaskaha? That means one is mindless, not mindful. Sada ashuchihi, which means one is constantly mixed up in all these impurities. This clear analytical intellect or mind is not there, but one is mixed up with all the dross, with all the junk, without carefully sifting it out every moment. What happens then? Na sa tat padam apnoti samsaram cha adhigacchati. What happens to such a person? That fellow keeps on drifting on this road, because that road where it is supposed to, the road was an instrument, was an intermediate. I mean, it was some way of going to some place. But what has happened is that one has lost one's way, and then because there is no clear idea behind, so one is keeping on traveling on this road. That's all that is meant here. Samsara is, take the word literally, samyak sarati iti samsaraha. That which constantly changes. So what happens to a person who has not exercised these faculties? Well, the faculties were supposed to be guided towards a certain focus. So what happens? Focus goes away. Lack of focus. So lack of focus means what? One keeps wandering all over the place. That's all that is being said. Conversely, yah tu vigyanavan bhavati, which means one is equipped with a solid, strong intellect. Samanaskaha. Earlier one was amanaska, here it is samanaska, which means with one's mind focused on the goal. Sada shuchihi. Not getting caught up in all these impurities and dross. What happens to somebody who has these qualities? Sa tu tat padam apnoti yasmat bhuyo na jayate. What happens? Reaches that from which there is no further coming forth and going away. which means one reaches the goal. Essentially, it's saying that, look, if I travel on the road with a clear intention in mind, what will happen? I will finally reach the goal and I do not have to come back to the road. That's all that's being said here. Vijnana sarathi riyastu manah pragrahavan naraha sa advana param apnoti tad vishno paramam padam. But here the thing is, it's been given in terms of an analogy, right? Traveling on a road. And therefore one has to withdraw from that analogy and come to the thrust of come to the intent soon. And that's what he does here. Vijnana, that means this powerful, capable intellect which unifies thought, feeling and willing. One who has this as the charioteer, this well-trained, unified mind or intellect as the charioteer, and mana, that means that the mind is a well-held pair of reins, does not get distracted here and there. Sa advanaha, advana is road, of the road. Sa advanaha param, gets to the end of the road. What is the end of the road? Param apnoti, gets to it, but the word apnoti is attains. It is not goes to. Because here we are talking about Advaita Vedanta, so it's not going from here to a different place. Because finally it's not really a different thing like an object that one catches hold of, but reaches the end of one's enquiry. What was the enquiry we started off with? This empirical being of what I call me is real. This world around me is real. And the enquiry was, what is it that in my psyche, what is it that grants reality to all this? And that is being answered. That question, if one holds on to it with a sharp, determined intellect and a strong mind, without getting distracted here and there, one reaches that goal, reaches the goal of that enquiry. Sa advanaha param apnoti tat vishnoho paramam padam. Padam means not foot here, but that status, that state. And here it's referred to as Vishnu. Again, go to the word literally. Vishanath Vishnu. That means all-pervasive consciousness, which means consciousness without a second. Which means one had started off with the goal of trying to get an answer to this fundamental question. What is it? What is this conscious principle that grants reality to my subjective experience and reality to this world? And if one has held on to this inquiry, this assurance is being given that you will get a clear answer by getting to this principle of consciousness itself. That principle, without a second, without anything to divide it from something else, is what is being referred to as Vishnu. So that is the supreme abode of this principle, of this all-pervasive principle of consciousness, which we call Vishnu. Okay, fine. So this was essentially what are the qualities of mind that are necessary in order to get to this answer. Now, what is being said in the last few verses is, well, what is the process then? How do we now understand that a good mind and a good intellect is needed. But how do we train ourselves towards it? What is the process? What is really the road? Yeah. The previous one was the analogy. You say, okay, fine, that's great. You've given a great analogy. We've understood it. But that's just an analogy. What is it in reality? What is it that we need to do? What is it that we need to act on? And that's being told here. Indriyebhya parahi artha, arthebhyascha param manaha, manasastu para buddhi, buddhir atma mahan paraha. Mahata, I'll read these two verses because they go together. Mahata param avyaktam, avyaktat purusha paraha, purushat na parang kinchit, sakashtha sa paragatihi. superior to the senses, which means the senses are under the control of what? Of the objects of the senses. Indriyebhya parahi artha. Arthebhyascha, but here it's not the object in the sense of a physical object outside that is being meant. It is the significance. Artha literally means significant, that which is significant. So the senses bring the objects of the senses to the mind. The entire Upanishadic analysis is of the subject, not the objective reality, mostly. What is it that is real about the subject? That's the point of inquiry. So the senses bring the objects of the senses to the mind. So it is essentially the inner process. The senses are these physical doors through which the content, that the subjective content of the senses have entered the mind. That's really the artha. That's the sense in which one should understand that the objects of the senses are superior to the senses, which means subtler. Arthebhyascha param manaha. But once these come, who is there that will receive those things? And that's the mind. It is the mind which will receive them and react by saying, okay, this is pleasurable or this is painful. Therefore, the mind is superior to these objects of the senses. Manasastu para buddhi. The mind will react in terms of pain and pleasure. But who is going to decide for the mind? That's this buddhi. That is this intellect. That is this decisive intellect. And from buddhir atma mahan paraha. Atma here, or Mahan, is basically being referred to as, again, this unified principle of the mind. Yeah, Mahat is basically the universal mind that is being referred to. Yeah. Okay. Mahataha param avyaktam. So from the universal mind, what is superior is the universal causal state. See, the mind itself is what says that something is caused by something, something is an effect of something. Therefore, it points, this universal notion of causality points to a cause which is therefore regarded as superior to this universal principle of cause and effect, which is what is being roughly referred to as this Mahat or Mahan here. So that is this avyakta, causality. Avyakta, but then that's not all. That is saying, okay, that is the place from where causality, so to speak, begins. Avyaktat purushaha paraha. The principle of consciousness is something on which this whole structure of causality and this mind pointing it to, or the universal mind pointing towards a primeval cause, rests on. That principle principle of consciousness is beyond even this supreme cause. Purushat na param kinchit. Beyond that principle of consciousness, nothing is. Na param kinchit sakashtha. When you started off with this enquiry of what is real about my existence, what is real about the world, this is the culmination. This unqualified principle of consciousness is where you're headed. That's the goal. Sakashtha sa paragatihi. That is the supreme culmination of all our aspirations. Okay? Great. We've heard that. Now we've heard of the goal, but then why aren't we able to catch hold of it? And then he says the difficulty. Esha sarveshu bhuteshu gudha ayamatma na prakashate. This is subtle. This principle of consciousness, even though it is the most obvious thing in all our experience, it is difficult to grasp because of our habit of catching hold of that which is outside. Drishyate tu agraya buddhaya. But in that case, is there no way out? Yes, there is. Sharpen and make the intellect pure and one-pointed. agraya buddhya, sukshmaya, capable of catching hold of the subtle. So, through this subtle, sharp intellect, sukshma darshibhi, those who have trained themselves in this capacity to grasp the subtle, by them, through the by means of this subtle and sharp intellect, it can be grasped. Yes, it is difficult, but it is not impossible. It can be grasped, and this is the way one needs to train oneself. And what are the steps? Yachet vak manasi pragyaha. In this capacity to this sharp intellect unified with feeling and willing, yachet vak manasi, the speech and mind, surrender it to this sharp, decisive intellect. Yachet means as if it is an offering, donated to, given to, which means basically absorbed in. So the first step, absorb the mind and speech in the intellect. That means that the capacity, deeper capacity for thought, unifies speech and mind. That's the step that is being talked about here. Yachet vak manasi pragnaha, tat yachet jnanam atmani, jnana atmani, the faculty of pure awareness, knowledge. Absorb this pragya into that pure faculty of knowledge. Jnanam atmani mahati niyachet. This faculty of knowledge absorb in this universal principle of knowledge. Tad yachet shanta atmani. Once having done that, then shanta. That means when that self which is at permanent position of peace, undisturbable. So the process has been talked about, and then he warns us, then the Upanishad warns us, Uttishtata jagrata prapya varan nibodhata kshurasya dhara nishita duratyaya durgam pathastat kavayo vadanti. It's not a cakewalk, so be up and doing. And there are people who have gone on this path before. They have that wisdom, acquire it, ask them, and then translate it into your own action. This is the meaning of this passage. And finally, like all Upanishads, a via negativa statement. Sayesha neti neti atma is the Brihadaranyaka. Here it is, this particular passage again. Ashabdam, asparsham, arupam, avyayam, tatha arasam, nityam agandhavat cha yat, anadi anantam mahatah param dhruvam nichayatat mrityumukhat pramuchyate. All these things which condition our being and put into small little dockets and pose themselves as some things that as if the differences are real, these are to be negated by analysis. They do not withstand analysis. What are these things? Shabda, sound, principle of demarcation, which delineates one object from another by means of a name. Ashabdam, asparsham. Similarly, touchable, touchable with one kind of feeling, not touchable with with a different kind of feeling. Arupam, the senses are being negated here. Ashabdam, ears. Asparsham, skin, touch. Arupam, the eyes perceive. So it's again this principle of differentiation given by the eyes, negative. So essentially the senses which indulge in differentiation being negated here. Left, avyayam, that which cannot be changed, cannot be destroyed. Tatha arasam, rasam here is again the tongue, taste. Nityam, nityam means again without any change in time. Again comes back to agandhavat, gandha is smell. So essentially 5 objects of the senses which are causing differentiation negated. And the positive part here is avyaya nitya. Anadi. Again here now it's in context of time. That which does not have a beginning in time. Does not have an end in time either. Anantam. Mahataha param dhruvam. This unified principle of knowledge, that which it holds, paramam dhruvam. Dhruvam means essentially that whose existence is not conditional on anything. Nichayatat, having known that. Mrityu mukhat pramuchyate. This mortal fear that all living beings have of death basically understands that the essence of my being is not affected by birth or death of this individual physical body. Having grasped that, what happens? One is freed from death. One's essence of one's being is understood as something that is not caught within this framework of birth and death, and so one is freed from death. So this is the passage-wise translation of the various verses that Vivekananda has summarized in that lecture. So we'll stop here, but let me just summarize, because I don't think anybody can do a better job of summarizing than Vivekananda himself. So let me just read out that one paragraph and then we'll close. Here is a beautiful figure. Picture the self to be the rider and the body the chariot. The intellect to be the charioteer, mind the reins and the senses the horses. He whose horses are well broken and whose reins are strong and kept well in the hands of the charioteer, the intellect, reaches the goal, which is the state of him, the omnipresent. But the man whose horses, the senses, are not controlled, nor the reins, the mind, well managed, goes to destruction. This Atman in all beings does not manifest himself to the eyes or the senses, but those whose minds have become purified and refined realize him. Beyond all sound, all sight, beyond form, absolute, beyond all taste and touch, infinite, without beginning and without end, even beyond nature, the unchangeable. He who realizes him frees himself from the jaws of death. But it is very difficult. It is as it were walking on the edge of a razor. The way is long and perilous, but struggle on. Do not despair. Awake, arise, and stop not till the goal is reached. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.